Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Life Health Show. I'm so excited about my next guest. This is Tom Fisher, and I love to have people on the show who've overcome major illnesses so they could share their experiences. But Nurse Tom also is going to talk about what he does now because in his healing of cancer with the raw food diet and some other things, he's learned to help others with this. So let's introduce Nurse Tom here to the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, appreciate it, Paul. Appreciate being here. Thank you very much.
Now, you've been on before talking about healing cancer and things people can do. You used to work as the head nurse at Hippocrates Health Institute, and you were eating a raw food diet 100%, but now you still eat mostly raw. But tell everybody, share who you are and your experience with cancer, how you got better, and what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, essentially, I grew up in Philadelphia, and in Philadelphia, if people are aware of that area, the city of brotherly love, it's known for foods that aren't that healthy for us. And these are some of the foods that I grew up with, like the cheesesteak and soft pretzels and candy and all kinds of ice cream and things like this. And with that, though, I was also pretty athletic as well. I played basketball to the collegiate level, so I had feelings of invincibility that I could do whatever I want and eat whatever I want with no consequences. And, during my late 20s, I started to have some fatigue. That was a little weird for me because I was normally a very active guy. I was running long distances and playing hours of basketball and other exercise. And, the energy kept getting worse, and I started to have discomfort, and the discomfort turned into pain to the point where I said, I gotta get this looked at. I thought I might be having maybe some type of a heart issue. And so I went to the ER, and they did all types of cardiovascular tests, which I was totally fine with, although they did find a mass in my chest region. And they did further tests and scans and even a biopsy, and they found out that I actually had stage 4 cancer to the bone at that point. It was a type of lymphoma called Hodgkin's disease. And back then, like I was mentioning, I didn't really know much about nutrition. I didn't know about health. I didn't know about things to do for my lifestyle. So it was a real learning curve. And basically it was, learn or die is basically what I had at that point, because the prognosis wasn't good. I had about 40% chance of living 5 years at that point. And a lot of stress as well going on. And, I did end up doing some conventional therapy. I did about 6 months worth of chemo, which did help knock back the cancer, but I definitely wasn't out of the woods. And as I was learning during that time, I started to change my diet, and I started to learn more about raw and living foods. I started learning more about supplementation and ways to reduce stress and ways to try to detoxify my body. And, I started to incorporate these things, and, it took me time. And then I found, Hippocrates was a place that I went to as well as a guest. And there they went a bit deeper into the raw and living foods than what I was doing, and incorporated things like wheatgrass and more of the green vegetable juices and sprouts, as well as sea vegetables and other, very nutritious foods that are also very anti-cancer because they work in a few ways. Is one, it's alkalizing the body. So as you alkalize, it helps to prevent the spreading of cancer. Cancer needs to have a fairly acidic medium to spread, along with things like fuel, such as sugar. So they don't really do sugar there either. And so you start to cut out the bad things in your diet, like I used to do. You start to add in these things that are alkalizing, but then you're also adding in things like sprouts. So sprouts are basically the beginning of life of a plant. They're highly nutritious, very absorbable. They're alkalizing, and many of them have very high levels of phytonutrients. So phytonutrients has been shown through science, through research, that they're tremendously anti-cancer. And these are things you can grow right at home. And if you look at, for example, the University of Oregon, through their research, they found that the plant of broccoli compared to the broccoli sprouts, the broccoli sprouts have 50 times the phytonutrients than the mature plant. So you're just getting that much more anti-cancer activity in your food. And the other thing is the mind body as well, beyond just the food, because that high stress can weaken the immunity. So when you can learn techniques to reduce stress, whether that be a mind body talk therapy or prayer or meditation or whatever may work for you, these are really great ways to create what's called homeostasis in the body, or a balance of the adrenal function. And there's certain things, of course, that can stress our bodies more. For example, caffeine or coffee can stress those adrenal glands even more so, and weaken them over time. And I believe, just from my own research and things, that if we're not living our passion and our purpose, that can also stress our body, and thus the adrenal glands as well. And so we have to look at these things. But the other thing that I ended up doing through time was looking at toxicity as well. And if we look at some of the research that's been done by various organizations, about 70-80% of all cancers, they state, are coming through toxic exposures. And unfortunately, it seems like our planet's becoming more toxic, unfortunately. And these toxins can come in our foods, in the way of pesticides, in the way of glyphosate or Roundup, in the way of other organophosphates and other toxins, depending on how it's produced and what they use to produce it, and even the soils that it's grown in, because the soils, unfortunately, have been depleted by about 80% of the nutrients, depending on the region that you're looking at. And plants don't need a whole lot to grow. They need NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Humans need, about 60 or so nutrients to keep us going well. And so, the toxicity can come also, of course, from the air. That's why behind me you see an air purifier. They can come from the water. That's why in my kitchen I have water filtration. And it's kind of interesting, Paul, I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and I was thinking back to when I was younger, and I thought, would I ever think, my younger self would think that I need to have an air purifier in not a super large area, a water purifier, and then if you can see behind me on the other side, these supplements here, I don't take all those every day, by the way. I mix and match depending on what I need and feel. But I would have never thought that I would need this type of this equipment and nutrients to kind of support my body to maintain health and protect against toxicity and all these things.
Sure. I want to
it,
go back real quick. So you said, how old were you when you went to the emergency room?
I was 29.
29. So
29.
now up
Yeah.
to that point, what were you doing for a living?
I was working at that point in IT. I had changed careers. I was working before that in the medical as a physical therapy assistant, and decided that it was going to be too much training and too much education time and cost to move forward with that. And so I went into IT, which was much less training, but more money, although not my passion at all. And like I mentioned earlier, I think not living in what you want to do or your passion, you're going to run into trouble sooner or later.
Sure. So you go at 29 years old to the emergency room. They tell you you have 4 months to live. You have stage 4 cancer. You had no signs or idea before that you could ever have something this serious. What's going on in your head at that moment?
Oh man, it was a myriad of different emotions, from frustration, anger was a biggie. Like I thought, how could I allow myself to get this sick? I was an athlete. Why would I be sick? Um, and some down low feelings as well at times, of course. And yeah, it was definitely a trying time for sure, for myself and my family. Yeah.
Now, when you say you were an athlete, so if I remember correctly, were you into weightlifting?
I played basketball. I played
Like that.
basketball in
So how
college.
much did you weigh at the time
When I was in college, or when I got diagnosed.
when you got diagnosed?
I was probably around 195, 200 in that ballpark.
Okay. So you get diagnosed, the doctors present to you the chemo, which you did, and like right away, did they tell you if you don't do this, the worst, or did you know right away I'm gonna do this and other things, or did you just do I'll do this and then I'll see when I get out what else I'm gonna do? What was your
Yeah, it was like I said back then, I was learning. So, I didn't know a lot, of course, about anything nutrition or health or lifestyle. So, it's a lot of pressure to anyone facing that diagnosis, to do the conventional treatments. There's a lot of pressure from the doctors. There's a lot of pressure from family and friends because they feel that is the only way to do things. I actually wanted to try a natural route. I wanted to try some dietary changes. I had learned about a tea called Essiac tea then, and I wanted to also use different supplements. But I think at that point, my knowledge base was so minimal in that it was quite risky. Although I had met someone else who had done some of those things with a similar diagnosis as mine, not as advanced, who stated they beat their cancer, using some of those things. And but because of uncertainty, I guess, if you would, not knowing if it would work and not knowing enough people that had recovered naturally, I did some of the conventional treatment.
So you did the conventional treatment, some of it, and then you learned more. You started eating more raw living foods. And when did the light go off that I'm going to completely go full steam ahead with this living foods lifestyle and all these natural alternative medicines, medications, and all this, and get off all the pharmaceutical? How long did that transition take place, and what exactly made was your final like this is where I'm going to go?
Yeah, it probably took, in the ballpark of 6 to 12 months, I guess, when I was diagnosed, because such a learning curve. And back then the internet was sort of in its infancy, so it wasn't as robust as it is now, in finding things. But when I was doing research on natural things that can help with cancer, I literally felt like the screen, like something from the screen was coming through and like slapping me in the face and showing me, like, every other thing kept showing me, plant-based or vegan. These are the foods that help with cancer. And I was like, wow, this is the way I got to go. I mean, it's showing in the research, and I was finding more people that it's helped. And then I started to go beyond just vegan or raw into living foods as well, and juicing and things like that. So it went like another level into that, because it's a learning process. But I started to run into people who were telling me about how people are recovering from disease, in my quest, that had a lot of experience using raw and living foods. And I just felt that that was the way I needed to go to allow my body to fully heal.
So the statistics showed the stage of cancer you had and the type of cancer you had. 4 to 5 months is a survival rate, and you did your chemo.
It
And
was just to interject for a moment, it was a 40% chance of living 5 years, because that's what they call
okay,
them. That's what they
so
say
forty
if you
percent
live
chance of
5 years.
living 5 years. Does that mean the other 60% chances that you wouldn't live 5 years?
Yes.
Okay, so over this year, so I recant my statement about 4 to 5 months. Okay, so 40% chance you live 5 years. So this first year of doing these experimental things, after you did the chemo, where was your diagnosis? Did it get, you said it helped a little, but did they
Yeah,
change?
it had reduced the cancer and things like that, because I had, different large masses and things, but I still needed to work on things to fully recover.
Now, did you need to have surgery or they couldn't do surgery with this type of cancer?
No, they didn't recommend surgery. I mean, I had a biopsy, which is a surgery, but that's just to diagnose. And then at that point, they only recommended chemotherapy.
Okay. So after you finished the chemotherapy or when you decided to stop, whichever one it was, uh, and you started to do more natural alternatives, how close did you watch your numbers and everything? And when did you finally realize that this isn't a remission, this is a cure, and I don't have anything wrong? Or did you just stop going to get tested? How was that process?
Yeah, so that was yeah, it was one that as I saw how my health was doing and I was gaining confidence with that. Like in the beginning, they test you a lot. You're probably scanned like every 6 months, which obviously is a significant amount of radiation if people don't understand that. For example, I was doing scans of my chest region, and one CT scan of your chest can be anywhere from 2 to 400 X-rays at one time. So it's a significant amount of radiation. And there's a thing called scanxiety. So, when you go to get a scan, what's in the person's mind a lot of times is, oh my God, I don't want to see more cancer, or if your cancer's gone, you don't want to see it come back. So it creates a lot of anxiety for people that are doing them, and they do them very often. And so this is like a constant state of stress that's being produced on someone who's already sick and doesn't need any more stress. um, and of course, I did a lot of blood tests as well during that time to monitor things, although not extensive blood tests, which probably should have been done if I was, working with, say, a integrative or functional medicine doctor. Um, and probably after, maybe a couple years, they or a year, they started reducing the scans, I was learning more and more at this time, so I knew how bad the radiation was for me. And at one point, maybe a couple years after, I'm like, I'm not doing scans all the time. I'm going to keep an eye on my blood test. This is for me. I'm going to see, I started to get really in tune with my body, how I feel. Do I notice anything in my system? And if I felt that I needed anything, then I would do it. But I wasn't going to go on the train of just keep doing all this testing that is giving me a lot more radiation, because I felt that I was on the right path. And when I would test myself very periodically, things were good. So I would keep an eye on my blood tests, and certain markers were more important than others. And if they were looking not good, then I would probably do further testing.
So when you initially went to the hospital because you weren't feeling well, and
Mhm.
you know it was cancer, there was a heart issue possibly. So once you got diagnosed and you're doing all these methods and everything, did you still have those issues besides the testing of not feeling well, or did those pretty much go away once you started chemo, or how long did those feelings
Uh,
last?
yeah, probably, because the tumors were shrinking a bit, I probably started to reduce pain, although, you get other complications of the chemo, which, would be, my hairstyle now. um, fatigue, lack of appetite, nausea. And some of the research shows that it can make you a greater potential for cancer in the future when you've had that treatment. Because a lot of times chemo won't kill cancer stem cells, and they're the they're the ones you want to get rid of so that it doesn't come back.
Sure. So, so you decide to go on this raw food diet, and so were you at Hippocrates Health Institute when you decided to go all raw, or did you go all raw before you checked in as a guest to Hippocrates?
I actually started before I was a guest, because I was learning a lot as I was going through the process. So I started before I went there as a guest, but they of course take it to a higher level, with some of the juicing and wheatgrass juice. I don't think I was doing wheatgrass juice before, and that kind of thing. But yeah, and I probably wasn't eating as many sprouts as they do either.
And besides monitoring your blood work, did you eventually go for another scan and realize that there's nothing there at all, or did you just never go back to doing the scans?
No, I did do like periodically if I thought, something was weird or I felt a little off maybe for a little bit, or, anything in my blood work that I didn't really thought was 100%, then I would get tested. Although it was rare. For example, probably the last scan I've had was, maybe 7, 8 years ago, you know.
And what happened on that scan? Were you cancer free, or would you just,
Yeah, they couldn't find any.
and what was their response or reply when they couldn't find it?
They don't normally say much. It's just like, oh yeah, you're good, and have a good one.
Really? Wow. They didn't ask you what you were doing or anything?
Nah, nah.
Okay, so
I,
now, yeah, go ahead. What?
I had one doctor who was kind of interesting in the hospital early on. He asked me why I thought that I got cancer. No other doctor ever asked me that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But normally they don't ask you what you're doing. And actually, my oncologist, I was trying to get some guidance, at least nutritionally, and my only dietary restraint that he gave me was not to drink alcohol. And that's only because I asked him.
Yes. Well, so at that point now, so you're cancer free after your scan. You confirm you don't have cancer. Are you still working in IT at this point?
I was for a little bit longer, maybe a couple years or so.
So what happened in terms of you leaving IT to do what you do now, and tell people what you do now?
So, essentially, I found that IT wasn't my passion, and I found it boring. It just didn't do much for me. So, really, my passion was more with working with people, helping people. I had worked in healthcare for years before that, and different people, including my mother, kept saying that I would probably make a good nurse or an RN. And I kept kind of pushing back on that, and more people would tell me I should do it. And I finally decided that I'm going to go back to school, and I became a nurse because at that time I didn't know what I could do holistically and still make a living, or naturally. And so I went through the training, and actually for a couple years I worked as a medical surgical oncology nurse in the hospital. Although I never administered chemotherapy. They wanted me to, but I denied the training. And after that is when I learned about a position at Hippocrates as a nurse, and through checking and calling and interviewing, I finally got the job at Hippocrates, which a lot of applicants were applying to. And from there, I worked as a nurse. I was doing the health consultations there. I was doing health lectures, and they liked my work there. So after some time there, I became the head nurse, the nurse manager, overseeing the medical team, and also supporting some of the research that they were doing. And then, later in my career there, I became the director of clinical education and research. Um, and, with my time there and what I've done personally, um, in one-on-one health consults, I have well over 16,000 hours in working with people of all types of health challenges, not just cancer. And what was nice about working there is I met a lot of good people. I've met people in health fields that I've learned from, and it pushed me to learn more because we would get, really unique disease processes there, and conditions that, no one was helping them. And so I felt I had to really elevate my knowledge status to help these people. And I kept learning through various trainings that I did. For example, in the A4M, which is the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. They do trainings with integrative practitioners that go through all types of disease processes and how to help people. I've done training in biological medicine with the Paracelsus Clinic from Switzerland. And I've done other training as well through the Brazilian American Academy of Aging and Regenerative Medicine, and also the Academy of Comprehensive Integrative Medicine. I was also an instructor for the Hippocrates Health Institute's program for health educators, and also for the Health Optimization Coaching Academy. So I like teaching. I also like helping people one-on-one. And so that was a good experience in that way, and also in learning. And then it kind of further moved me to what I do now, which I do consulting, but I do personal consults with people who need help. To basically, what I do is I create a plan of action for them. So I look at dietary support, I look at lifestyle, targeted nutrients as they need. I look at ways to de-stress the body, support better sleep, testing to help them, and if they need it, integrative therapies or adjunct therapies to support if they need more help. I also consult with other facilities that farm out work to me. For example, the Agape Healing Arts, which is a Chinese medicine clinic out of Tequesta, Florida here. Also another one called the Quantum Care, which they do a very large functional blood panel, and then we make recommendations on lifestyle and diet to help people. And also the Cancer Coach organization, where they use a HIPAA compliant app and work with people from all over the world and support them in different areas of life to help with their healing.
Wonderful. Well, I first met you, I believe, when you were a guest at Hippocrates. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, we were in the lunchroom and I met you. And
Probably.
then to see your transgression and just what you've been doing, I started running some health retreats, and you were one of my main speakers, because I always like to have people not just that know what to do, but people that understand what it is like to go through certain things. So
Yeah.
whether it's cancer or any other disease, you have that emotional understanding of what people are dealing with, which people that haven't dealt with disease, they can't even try to comprehend, like the feelings a person's going through.
Yeah.
And this is why I recommend you, when people call me with some serious health issues,
Mhm.
for people to do a consultation with you and get on board, because you understand the position you had at Hippocrates Health Institute. I believe was the most important position there, because yes, I'm a raw food chef, and it's important to learn how to eat healthy, and it's great that they teach people how to do it. But here you are, with the blood work, with the, telling people what to do. And one of the things Hippocrates offered was to monitor a person's blood work after they left the program, to see how they were doing. So they get to maybe once a year mail in their blood work. And a person like you reading that and helping these people is such an important thing. And I'm so excited and happy that you didn't just decide to go back to IT or do something, that you're doing this, and now you're doing this and offering consultations to people. So I
Yeah.
want to say, if anyone out there is going through some stuff, I'm going to put Nurse Tom's information below where you can contact him. He's still working on a website, but right now I'll put his phone number below. You can contact him, and he's the real deal. I mean, he's better. He's still good. Now, how many years ago is that you were
So yeah, now, wow, it's we're looking at about 23 years.
so
Yeah.
23 years cancer free after you've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer?
Yep. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Nurse Tom's been so busy, he has not had the opportunity to write a book or anything special like that as of yet. But the reason why he's been busy is he's been helping people out there and doing consultations with people. So,
Yeah.
so I'm so glad to have you here to
Yeah.
help people. So, what is your 3 top first steps, or somebody that's at a doctor, whether it's cancer or diabetes or something, and the doctor tells them, we got your blood work back, or we got an x-ray and you have a disease? I'm not talking like a broken bone or something, because you said it, you get it better, even though it's a hardship you're going through, but you have a disease where your life is on the line. What's the 3 steps you want to share with people right now? And if anyone wants further steps, contact Nurse Tom.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times for me, it's always disease specific. So, but of course, there's general things that we can look at to help people. I think really, a first step would be looking at the diet, of course, where we want to take out things that aren't supporting us, the sugars, the processed foods, the alcohol, the bad oils, that are not supporting us, and then start bringing in things that have more life. So, for example, sprouts or the vegetable juices and things like this, to start really regaining nutrition, because a lot of people will see themselves and they're eating all the time and they're still hungry. It's because their bodies are not nourished. They're getting calories, but they're not getting the proper nutrients that the cell needs, or even into the cell. So I think that dietary would be probably one of the top things. I would also look at ways to reduce stress. So that could be through things like prayer or meditation. It could be through talk therapy. Some of those talk therapies work better than others, but they're also specific to the person, meaning if that person wants to get help, they may only have a certain therapy that really works for them. But any therapy that works on the subconscious mind, such as hypnosis, is a good way to go, because normally you're going to get faster results that way. And then I would say, number 3 would be also to have a connection with the earth. And what I mean is, a lot of us, we're wearing shoes everywhere, or we're wearing socks, or we're indoors a lot, and we're not connecting to earth. And through research, and this is from Russian research, that they found their astronauts, their cosmonauts' health was not good. They found that with that, they thought maybe it was exercise. They thought, oh, we got to get the body moving. So they had them exercise. Their health was still not good. What they found they needed was the Schumann resonance from the earth, or with your bare feet on the soil or on the beach, connecting with the earth, which is, in my opinion, something very easy people can do for themselves, and something extremely healthful. And currently, I'm on actually a grounding pad myself as we speak. And what this human resonance does, and this is from research, it helps to lower your blood pressure, helps to lower your stress, also helps to reduce the electromagnetic burden on the body from things like, Wi-Fi and cell phones and satellites and all these things. And these are ways I think people can implement and implement them pretty quickly to start helping in the healing process.
It's amazing you said that. I was thinking when I grew up in New York in an apartment, and most
Mhm.
people, when you grow up in an apartment, unless I guess you're at the beach, you wouldn't even think about going outside of your apartment
Mhm.
barefoot. Now, when you have a house, it's different. I think all house owners at some point go out barefoot, whether it's to get the mail or something at some
Yeah.
point. But I know people that are 80 years old, and I don't think ever in their life that they walked outside barefoot, and they even use shoes at the beach. And
Mhm.
there's definitely something to say for it. I walk on the grass every day. I just love being in nature. But
So, yeah.
and all the other things you mentioned are wonderful. So there's so many other tips and suggestions, and like you said, it's disease specific and also person certificate. You got to meet people where they're
Mhm.
at, where they're willing to go.
True.
And I think it's important that there are people can get in touch with you that are going through it and not just running to a doctor. I think it's also important that you have the experience of working in a hospital and you
Mhm.
understand both sides of it. So
Yeah.
emotionally, you understand it from a position of what doctors have to say or what they should say or what, I think it's a great thing. So
Mhm.
now the other thing I want to mention before we close is, you know, when Nurse Tom was getting better from cancer, he was on 100% raw food diet, which is important. But you
Mhm.
don't have to do that for the rest of your life. You should always do mostly raw living foods. But you yourself, 23 years better from stage 4 cancer, you don't eat 100% raw diet right now.
Right.
But
Right.
the majority, you eat a good amount. But I don't want people to think it's all or none the rest of your life. You can't enjoy a cooked food if you want. Uh,
Right.
and Nurse Tom will meet you where you at. And if you want to go 100%, he certainly has the experience of how to help you make that happen. But if you don't want to go 100%, when the
Mm.
time is right for you to eat, add some other foods to your diet, Nurse Tom knows all about that and can help you with those decisions as well. So that's a wonderful thing you offer people.
Yeah. Yeah. Glad to help.
Great, great. Well, I'm going to put your phone number below, but tell people your phone number in case they want to get in touch with you. And we know in the future things change. You might have an office with a different number and everything else. Well,
Yes.
in that case, I'll
Yeah.
just put the number below so people can get it. In case
Yeah.
this changes in the
And
future, we
put
won't
my
mind you saying
email
the
too.
number. I'll put your email and your phone number below. And
Okay.
you're in South Florida, but people can contact you over the phone. They don't need to just see you physically. And
Yeah.
yeah, in closing, what else would you like to share with the people?
I would say if you've gotten any type of diagnosis or condition, things like that, don't lose hope. I mean, I've seen people with all types of conditions from autoimmune to cancer to cardiovascular issues to you name it. And I've seen people that have recovered from these things too. And in some cases, I've saw people in pretty bad spots. I mean, I saw people that were told to go to hospice, and years later are still alive and doing very well, by the way. So I'd say don't give up hope. And there are so many things you can do naturally for the body to allow the body to heal, because we are essentially self-healing uh beings. If you get a cut, what happens? You get a scab and it heals up. The body wants to be healthy. It's just we just need sometimes a little extra direction to get there.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, everybody. His name's Nurse Tom Fisher, and I'll put his contact information below. Thank you, Nurse Tom, for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And everybody, I just pray somehow, some way, if you're dealing with anything, that you find your cure. And if you need help, Tom's available. All right. Until then, everybody have a great day and a great roll life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.